Part 1. When the veil lifts, the truth you were never told about awakening. It started in complete stillness. The kind of silence that isn't just around you, it's inside you. You've been meditating for days, maybe weeks, maybe lifetimes, and then something shifts. A pressure builds between your eyebrows. It feels like a doorway opening, but where it leads, you don't yet know. You've read the books. You've heard that the third eye brings visions, intuition, expanded consciousness. But what they never told you is that sometimes the very first thing you see is not light, it's your own buried darkness. You expected clarity, but what you got was confrontation. You thought this would be bliss, but instead it feels like chaos. Why? Because when the third eye opens, it doesn't just show you divine insight, it shows you everything. And that means it shows you. Not the curated self, not the spiritual mask, but the raw, unfiltered aspects of your being that you've hidden from the world and from yourself. This is the shadow self, and it doesn't awaken gently. The shadow self is not evil. It is not your enemy. It is the accumulation of all parts of you that were denied, rejected, or left behind. Every suppressed emotion, every forgotten trauma, every unexpressed fear, it waits in the dark. And when your third eye opens, that darkness is no longer hidden. It floods into your awareness like a dam breaking. What you see may disturb you, but it is not punishment, it is invitation. You must understand this. Spiritual awakening is not a linear climb into the heavens. It is a descent into your depths. It is not light without shadow. It is light through shadow. So when your third eye opens and you begin to see beyond the illusion, you will not only see angels, you will see your shadows, the masks you wear, the lies you've told yourself, the pain you've carried in silence, the parts of you that you hoped awakening would erase, but instead it illuminates. Have you ever felt like you were losing your mind right as you were becoming more spiritual? That's not madness, it's exposure. You are not going crazy. You are seeing clearly for the first time. And clarity in the beginning can be terrifying, because everything you've avoided rushes to the surface. And the third eye doesn't shut easily once it opens. It becomes a mirror that reflects back your soul. And your soul is not just light, it is everything.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
When your third eye awakens, your sensitivity increases. You start to feel what others are hiding. You sense energies, motives, wounds. At first, it can feel overwhelming, especially if your own shadow is still unexamined. You begin to see the masks others wear, but you also see your own reflection in their eyes. Every judgment becomes a wound calling for integration. Every irritation becomes a message. You cannot escape from yourself anymore. The shadow self is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to be seen. It is the inner child who was never heard, the angry teenager who was shamed, the adult who compromised too much. These parts rise up when the third eye opens, because now, finally, you have the awareness to meet them. But will you? Or will you try to bypass them with more light, more mantras, more distraction? This is where the real test begins. Because spiritual bypassing is one of the most seductive traps on the path. You'll want to escape into visions, into cosmic language, into philosophies that keep you from feeling. But the third eye doesn't open just to give you spiritual entertainment. It opens to give you sight, and real sight means seeing everything, especially the things you wished would stay buried. So ask yourself now, with brutal honesty, what am I still afraid to see about myself? What pattern do I keep repeating but refuse to own? What emotion do I keep numbing even while I speak of awakening? The third eye brings awareness, but awareness without courage becomes paralysis. you must be willing to walk through the shadows it reveals, not just observe them, but enter them. And when you do, you begin to reclaim your power, because every shadow holds a gift, every fear contains a key, every wound, when embraced, reveals wisdom. But only if you stop resisting, only if you stop labeling the darkness as bad, because the truth is, the shadow self is the keeper of your authenticity. It is the part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. When your third eye opens, your illusions crumble. Relationships that once felt safe now feel hollow. Jobs that gave you identity now feel like prisons. You start to question everything, and that questioning is sacred. Do not run from it. Let it burn what is false. Let it dissolve what is inauthentic, because only through that destruction can the real you begin to emerge. And when you do, you begin to reclaim your power, because every shadow holds a gift, every fear contains a key, every wound, when embraced, reveals wisdom. But only if you stop resisting, only if you stop labeling the darkness as bad, because the truth is, the shadow self is the keeper of your authenticity. It is the part of you that remembers who you were before the world told you who to be. When your third eye opens, your illusions crumble. Relationships that once felt safe now feel hollow. Jobs that gave you identity now feel like prisons. You start to question everything, and that questioning is sacred. Do not run from it. Let it burn what is false. Let it dissolve what is inauthentic, because only through that destruction can the real you begin to emerge. You must become a guardian of your own energy, a witness of your own thoughts, a student of your own patterns, because the shadow self will test you. It will seduce you into old stories. It will whisper temptations. It will whisper temptations. It will wear the voice of your inner critic. But now, you have the power to pause, to observe, to choose differently. That is your liberation. And in that liberation, something miraculous begins to occur. You start to feel whole, not perfect, but whole. You begin to accept yourself, not just the light parts, but the dark ones too. You stop pretending. You stop performing. You start being. And that beingness is magnetic. It draws others who are also ready to see, to feel, to awaken. You become a mirror to the world, not because you're flawless, but because you're real. And in your realness, your light becomes stronger, because it is no longer at war with your shadow. It is working with it. This is the true meaning of integration. And integration is the sacred purpose of awakening. So I ask you now, not as a guru, not as a teacher, but as a fellow traveler, are you ready to see what you've never dared look at? Are you ready to love the parts of yourself that you feared, hated, or ignored? Are you ready to let your third eye not just show you visions, but show you truth? Because the shadow self that awakens when your third eye opens is not your downfall. It is your doorway. And what lies beyond that doorway is who you were always meant to become. Part 2. The mirror beyond the mind. When the third eye becomes a portal to the forgotten you, the moment you begin to see beyond the veil, you realize something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. You are not who you thought you were. You are not just a name, a body, a story. You are a multi-dimensional being, layered with lifetimes of experience, karma, archetypes, and energy patterns. And the third eye doesn't just open your vision, it opens your memory. Not just of this life, but of the deeper soul-level narrative that has followed you across time. This is when the shadow becomes more cunning. No longer just unresolved emotions from this life, it begins to emerge as echoes from other lifetimes. You begin to feel guilt without context, fear without a cause, longing you can't explain. These are the fragments of your soul that have been divided, scattered, suppressed. And now that you are seeing on a spiritual level, they begin to return to you. But not always in peace, they return as tests. You may begin to feel like you're being haunted not by ghosts, but by versions of you that you abandoned. The warrior who became cruel, the healer who lost faith, the lover who betrayed, the mystic who fell into arrogance. These are not fantasies. They are realities that live within your energetic field. When your third eye opens, the boundary between lives becomes thin, and the shadow self, already complex, becomes layered with the weight of your soul's history. At this stage, many retreat. They go back to what's easy. They close the eye. They numb the sight. Because seeing so much can feel like drowning in truth. But if you can stay present, if you can breathe through the storm, something sacred begins to happen. You start to remember who you are beyond the shadow. Not just the darkness, but the one who sees the darkness, the observer, the eternal consciousness, the light behind the veil. And here's a truth that may shake you. Your shadow is not trying to destroy your light. It's trying to protect it. In its own twisted, wounded way, it holds the parts of you that were too sacred to be exposed in a cruel world. Your sensitivity, your intuition, your compassion, it hid them in darkness because the world wasn't ready. But now, you are. And so the shadow begins to open like a vault. And what it reveals is your true self buried beneath the survival self. But to get there, you must pass through inner fire. The fire of self-inquiry, the fire of truth. And that fire will burn everything false. It will burn the spiritual ego, the part of you that uses awakening as an identity. It will burn the victim, the part of you that blames instead of transforms. It will burn the performer, the part of you that seeks external validation. These must fall away, because the third eye is not a toy. It is a portal, and portals demand sacrifice. Not the sacrifice of blood, but of illusion. You must give up who you thought you were. You must let your identity crack. You must let your beliefs be questioned. And you must do this not once, but again and again. Because awakening is not a destination. It is a spiral, a shedding, a remembering. And each layer takes you deeper, not higher, deep. This is where most people misunderstand the third eye. They think it's about seeing spirits, reading minds, predicting futures. But those are just side effects. The real purpose of the third eye is to see yourself, to see through the masks of the mind, to witness your conditioning, your programming, your story, and to choose something more, something real, something soul-aligned. But to do that, you must be willing to feel. And feeling is the most avoided act on the planet. We distract, we numb, we escape. But when the third eye opens, there is no more escaping. The emotions rise like waves. Grief, rage, despair. And often there is no clear reason why. That's the soul processing what the mind cannot comprehend. Let it move. Let it shake you. Let it purge. Do you understand why so many fear awakening? Because it is not just light, it is truth. And truth is uncomfortable. Truth demands change. Truth ends relationships. Truth dissolves careers. Truth breaks identities, but it also liberates. And in that liberation, you begin to taste something you haven't felt in lifetimes. Inner peace. Not the peace of silence, but the peace of alignment. The peace that comes when your inner world and outer world finally match. When you no longer lie to yourself. When you no longer wear masks. When you are no longer afraid of being seen, because you have seen yourself. That is the gift of the third eye. It brings you home, not to a place but to a presence. But let's not romanticize it. This path is brutal. It breaks you. It isolates you. It ruins your ability to tolerate the inauthentic. You may lose people. You may lose comfort. But what you gain is priceless. Yourself. And when you have yourself, you have everything. Because from that space you can create a life that is true. A life that feeds your soul, not just your ego. So how do you navigate the shadow once it's awakened? You treat it like a sacred guest. You listen. You ask it questions. You sit with it in meditation. You write to it. You breathe with it. And most of all, you stop judging it. Because judgment is what created the shadow in the first place. Acceptance is what heals it. And as you accept more of yourself, something unexpected happens. Your vision sharpens. Not just your inner sight, but your outer perception. You begin to see the world differently. You see the pain behind people's anger, the fear behind their control, the wounds behind their masks. You stop reacting. You start understanding, and that understanding is wisdom. This wisdom does not come from books. It comes from integration, from walking through your own darkness and coming out with medicine. And that medicine is compassion, not pity, not superiority, but the deep, abiding knowing that we are all carrying shadows. And the only way to heal them is to love them. So I ask you now, what part of your shadow still scares you? What truth are you still avoiding? What emotion have you labeled as wrong? These are the gates. These are the thresholds. And when you walk through them, you don't just awaken, you evolve. And in that evolution, the third eye becomes something more than a chakra. It becomes a compass, a guide, a flame that burns through illusion and lights the way forward, not with certainty, but with clarity. And clarity is worth more than certainty. Because clarity allows you to move even when the path is unknown. You begin to trust your inner voice. You begin to follow energy, not logic. You begin to choose alignment over approval. And that is when you step into your power. Not the power of dominance, but the power of presence. The power of being so rooted in your truth that nothing can shake you, not even your own shadow. Because now, your shadow is no longer your enemy. It is your teacher, your compass, your ally. And when the shadow becomes an ally, you become unstoppable. Because you are no longer fragmented. You are whole. Part 3. The final integration, becoming whole in a world that worships the mask. There comes a turning point in your awakening when the fear of your shadow fades. Not because it disappears, but because you finally learn to sit with it. You stop running. You stop bargaining. You stop trying to convince yourself that you're only light. And instead, you begin to live with your darkness not as a weight, but as a wisdom. That's the moment the third eye stops being a portal of chaos and becomes a gateway of clarity. By now, you've seen what most people never dare to look at. The shame buried beneath your smiles, the rage hidden behind your spirituality, the grief buried so deep in your body that it took years to unlock. You faced illusions that were so tightly woven into your personality that letting them go felt like dying. And yet, here you are, still breathing, still becoming, still unfolding into the mystery of who you really are. You've realized by now that the shadow self isn't some foreign entity. It's not a demon. It's not a curse. It's a wound sacred, raw, and deeply human. And when your third eye opens, it doesn't just reveal the cosmos. It reveals your pain. It shows you the energetic imprints that shaped your fears. It uncovers the ancestral trauma hiding in your DNA. It shows you how much of your life has been driven by unconscious patterns you didn't even know you inherited. And now you must choose. Will you keep repeating those patterns, or will you become the one who breaks the cycle? This is the true initiation. Not channeling spirits, not predicting futures, but reclaiming your will, reclaiming your energy, reclaiming every piece of yourself you gave away in exchange for love, safety, or approval. The third eye is not about escaping this world, it's about seeing it as it is, and still choosing to show up with love. Integration means responsibility. You can no longer pretend. You can no longer hide behind spiritual words while avoiding emotional truth. You can no longer use your gifts to bypass your wounds, because now you know too much. You've seen too deeply. You've felt the truth of your being, and once you've tasted that truth, nothing else satisfies. Illusions become unbearable. Small talk becomes painful. Inauthenticity becomes poison. And yet, you must live in this world, a world that still worships the mask, a world that prefers comfort over truth, a world that fears authenticity because it threatens control. But this is also the world that needs you the most, not the performance of you, not the curated version of you, but you raw, honest, awake, the one who has danced with their demons and found gold in the ashes. You begin to see that your third eye doesn't just open for your benefit, it opens for service, not in the sense of sacrifice, but in the sense of sacred contribution. You become a living example of what it means to be whole. You show people, not through preaching but through presence, that it's possible to embrace your shadow and still be light, to be broken and still be powerful, to be human and still be divine. And this is where the real power begins to emerge, not the kind that dominates, not the kind that manipulates, but the kind that radiates. The kind that walks into a room and shifts the energy without saying a word, because you are no longer fragmented, you are no longer pretending, you are no longer running from yourself. And that makes you magnetic. People will feel it. Some will be drawn to you, others will retreat. Not everyone is ready to see what you now embody. That's okay. Your job is not to convince. Your job is to be. To live is proof that awakening is not about perfection, it's about integration, about wholeness, about showing up in the world as someone who has seen every part of themselves and still chooses love. But love, at this level, is not soft. It is fierce. It sets boundaries. It tells the truth. It doesn't shrink to make others comfortable. It doesn't abandon itself to be accepted. This is the love of a soul that has walked through fire and come out clearer, cleaner, and more committed than ever. It is a love that sees clearly and still chooses to stay. You may wonder, what now? You've opened the eye. You've faced the shadow. You've started the integration. What's next? The answer is embodiment. It's time to live what you've seen, to bring your inner transformation into your outer life, to align your actions with your awareness, to let your relationships reflect your truth, to create, speak, move, and serve from the integrated self. This is where the third eye's power becomes practical. You begin to sense what decisions are aligned. You feel when someone's words don't match their energy. You intuitively know when to walk away. You recognize when your own ego is trying to take the wheel again. And you choose, moment by moment, to come back to center. This is mastery. Not control, but alignment. You stop seeking gurus. You stop chasing signs. You stop needing validation. Because now, you trust yourself. Not because you're always right, but because you're always willing to look. You're willing to reflect. You're willing to adjust. That humility combined with vision is what makes you a true spiritual warrior. And the shadow still visits. It doesn't go away forever. But now it's familiar. It's a companion, not a captor. It shows up to reveal the next layer, the next wound, the next gift. And you welcome it, not with fear, but with reverence. Because now you know, every shadow holds a piece of your light, and the more you embrace it, the brighter you become. So I ask you, as we close this journey, what would your life feel like if you feared no part of yourself? What could you create if you stopped hiding? Who could you become if you fully embodied the truth your third eye has shown you? You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole. And wholeness includes the light and the shadow, the seen and the unseen, the known and the mystery. Your third eye was never meant to show you only heaven. It was meant to show you everything, so you could become the bridge between the two. You are that bridge. You are the meeting point of soul and self, of shadow and spirit, of earth and sky. And now you walk with eyes wide open. Not just the ones on your face, but the one in your soul. Let the world see what it looks like when someone chooses to see everything in love anyway. This is the shadow self that awakens. This is the eye that never closes. This is the path of the awakened. And it is yours now.